correct advice. Are the original proponents of that particular process or that particular idea, are you keen to stick with that and go get us to get more advice, absolute technical advice as to what the pros and cons are of that change of or variation of the plan that we've submitted on? Or what would you suggest, Mr. CEO? You were looking at me, so... Or do you want me to go to the proponents first?
No, look, I don't know. Whatever you decide will be best, essentially. I say that to my wife all the time. I don't know, I'm thinking Hadley might want to just have a little conversation about what he's learned over the break. Or
I did speak to one of our auditors who said that him personally hadn't encountered this situation before. If you're of the mind to stick with where you're at this morning, and if based on the advice you've received, you felt that it potentially was materially different from the option that was consulted on through the consultation document, then we would need to seek further advice from audit on what that might look like, whether that meant we would need to adopt a new consultation document, and this option would go up against the three that you've previously consulted on, or some form of further consultation. But I don't know what that means from a process perspective, and I won't know in the short term. We would need to have that advice circulated around audit, and hopefully someone there has encountered it before. So not in a position to give what that process might look like at this point.
But Hadley, that process is only triggered if we believe that it's significantly different, correct?
I think so, yes. I think it really comes down to what the advice you've received from Nigel, your views around that significant materiality, and then if you were of the mind that it was, but you wanted to proceed with the process from here, then we would need to understand what that looked like from an LTP amendment perspective. Because in an ordinary situation, we'd be at a point where a decision was made and we would have the auditors back next week to audit for the final audit, and then we'd bring back an amendment for you to adopt on the 25th of June. If the advice from them was that we needed to reconsult, I just don't know what that would look like, how that would be undertaken, or when it would be undertaken.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes, thank you. Just my thoughts. We haven't actually addressed the second part of the consultation document, which was what to do with the museum. And my thoughts were that if we adopted that to say, yes, we would like to do a new museum, then we could use that to build the cultural heart that we're talking about on the domain and incorporate a whole different, because we didn't say where on the domain or anything, we just said a new museum. So couldn't that be part of an upgrade of the Great Lakes Centre, the library and everything to make that heart happen, and take our building out of it, which seems to be a little bit contentious, and put that on Taupo Street, and that would still create the heart and be bold with the things we want to do, but look at it as a community space and take us away. That's just where I'm thinking.
So, through Mr. Chairman, the only thing I'll say to that is you are right. The consultation document provides, one of the questions was specifically about the museum, and the wording on that is quite deliberate that it's somewhere on the domain. We didn't put where it was because that's down to detailed design to determine exactly where on the domain that would be and what it would look like.
Just going back to that Warren and Marnie, the master plan they did with the 4 options there, the only reason we picked that preferred option was because legally we had to, correct?
No, from what I remember, that was a vote.
That was the vote,
That
yes.
was the preferred.
But you still got to go out with an option, don't you?
No,
so
not at that point, because that was
Not at that
directing Warren and Marnie to go and develop the master plan.
Right. Okay. So it was a different process to this one.
Correct.
Yeah, so I think at that point that option that you picked was the one that didn't offend the most of you, essentially. So I don't think it was probably the favoured option for most of you, but it was not the least favoured, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, cool.
That's really your worship.
Councillor Williamson.
Yeah, thank you. Just my thoughts as well. Just thinking with talking about natural justice and fairness and the context and definition of materially difference. Obviously, with the original process, we chose through a democratic process around the table to go with option B. And it could have been any of those. So are we talking about, and obviously that's, so with terms of natural fairness, justice and fairness, that the community was given the information, notwithstanding the fact that perhaps there were some costings tied up with option D. Are we talking about, so I don't see that being unfair in that sense, that we've actually consulted and given information, enough information, or correct me if I'm wrong, is it materially different because we decide to go away from that to the preferred option to the two-photo terrace B car park? Is that the definition of materially different, or is it to do with materially different with respect to the option B and not giving enough information with option D?
Councillor Harvey?
My understanding, John, is it's materially different. If other information was presented, they may have made a different decision. Correct?
The test for whether, the test, yes, whether someone there would have had different or additional submissions to those already received, if there was different information presented. Yeah, that's the test.
Councillor Harvey?
I mean, my opinion is that people voted for something on the domain or not. So what it ended up being, is that hugely different? Is that what can we mould that into, it's still the same proposal?
That's the test.
There's an argument there. I don't know where exactly that line is drawn, but yes, that's one of the arguments is that the submissions received in this latest consultation process were, as you've indicated, were really about either on the domain or not on the domain, somewhere else. But that's true at one level. The other argument is, if you look at the detail which has been presented for option 4, which has been consulted on, that specifically included the proposal as outlined in the Cultural Precinct Master Plan, which was option B and not another option. So the question is, if you were to go for a different option, then does that mean that people who otherwise would have submitted, if that had been presented, haven't submitted?
Yes, Councillor Hickling.
Not quite sure where to start, but I think I was mentioned a couple of times with one of the submitters in terms of different processes that we've been through with regards to building a new administration block for the Taupo District Council. So I've been through this process 3 times. Each time the community have said they do not want an administration building on the domain. That's a fact. I honestly think that you're getting yourselves into a situation where, in my opinion, we will most definitely get a judicial review if we don't go out and reconsult on, which is it, option D of the proposal that this seems to be consensus of that's the option. For me, I do not want to go back to the community and consult. I think we've got 4 options. We need to make a decision. we've made a decision that we need to have all our staff into one building. So, you know, to me, there's difficulties with all the options. There's parameters around all the options. But some of them are less contentious than some of the others. But yeah, if you go towards the domain, you'll be lucky to turn aside within 5 years. Now, that's not a problem, probably. We can continue and lease. That's, you know, looking at the big picture. But, you know, Maggie's made a comment regarding the museum. I've always considered that the domain is a cultural hub. And that means like libraries, Great Lakes Centre, theatres, museum. If we could cluster those together to make a community hub of some description, then that is where my preferred option would be. And that's to consolidate onto the Tongariro, onto the Two Wharetau Street car park, move the bus station, clear Tongariro Street, beautify all that area into a proper cultural precinct. So,
I just have to make the point I concur with most of Councillor Hickling's comments, and I think he's hit it 100% on the mark.
Yeah, my only hesitation with having, you know, doing a museum and then doing a separate council building is just efficiencies when you put things together. So if we have, you know, if we built a separate museum and we need to create vibrancy to keep that museum sustainable and, you know, you want to have a cafe in it. If our libraries, you know, in a library going around the country now, they're building them with cafes in it. If we have a council building, an efficient use of meeting room space is to have a cafe. So we're going to have 3 different cafes, or if we put it together, we have one cafe that services all of those things. I just think putting it together is a logical and sustainable thing to do for our future.
Once again, I agree with Kirsty. Much as I understand that it will be a longer process, which is frustrating, I think we've got to think of the end goal and not be too concerned with, you know, how we get there. We've got to think what I agree it would be, what do you do first? You do the building here and then you do that later, or to me it's just a one thing. And we just have to bite the bullet and get on with it.
Okay, Councillor Rankin. Sorry.
My only concern about that is if it truly takes 5 years before we turn a sod, that's going to have a big impact on council staff. It is. That's another, 7 or 8 years that they'll be scattered round the town. That's asking a heck of a lot, and that is my real concern now about that. That's my only concern. And
you've got the whole process of the reserve, the changing of the management plan, going out through there. You know, it's all listed up on the, not on there, but a little bit further up. And that's before you even go out for design and detailed design and business case. You know, and then you've got to go out to the market to build. It's going to take you 2 years, I assume, 18 months, 2 years to complete a building of that nature. So I'm just saying 5 years because I think that would be probably exactly. And that's pretty straightforward. And that's what that's
Okay.
a comment regarding, to my mind, if you put the museum associated with the Great Lakes Centre, the museum, you actually create another hub within the town. So there is efficiencies in even doing that as well. Probably not quite as much as if the office facility is all there, but certainly there's savings with making that a nice module together as opposed to the museum being further down Story Place.
Okay. So, if we indicated that we wanted to build a new museum, also we wanted, I know, some money in there for Great Lakes Centre renewals, and built 2 Wharetāua Street, you know, pretty quickly. How's the appetite on that? You know, like, we need to do something with the museum, we know that. It's clear and concise. The Great Lakes Centre is looking old, so we need to do that as well. Okay, go back, that perhaps Barry's correct, that it's not that appetite to have the administration building on there. Would this have any, you know, I know it doesn't suit everyone, but is that the better option? I'm just mindful of the fact that the period of time we're going into now, if we need to reconsult and all that sort of thing, you know, the public are possibly over it, and I just don't feel comfortable going out with option D when we haven't even talked about it. I don't think that's fair on the people. But, sorry, I'm rambling. Councillor Park? Oh. Master plan's over there.
Yeah, just through the chair, I have some concerns around going out to reconsult. It's going to end up being the next triennium's decision, and it could end up back at square one or status quo. If with the timelines, having council staff and lease premises for, say, 5 to 7 years sort of defeats the purpose of the lease option, so maybe there is a compromise.
Can I just confirm, Gareth, what is in for the Great Lakes Centre in the long-term plan now?
Not much. So we've got normal renewals, etc. You'll remember that we were doing a business case for a development of the Great Lakes Centre, but that was predicated on getting other external funding as well. Yeah. Where are we at with that?
So that business case could be intertwined with the museum?
GLC as such, that would need to be a further piece of work to do based on us doing option B.
The next long-term plan, yeah.
We're talking about priorities and timing, right? So next long-term plan is only what?
Next year.
Hadley, 2 years. 2 years it'll be adopted. You'll be talking about it within early next year for those who are standing again and then are successful. So, so it's a matter of degrees and priorities, and I guess you're talking now about the ability to make a decision only on the museum and the council building, but the Great Lakes Centre, assuming council funding, would be that following year. Again, the business case was predicated on getting other funding as well, but logically council would have to put some funding up to it.
One thing that Audit New Zealand advised us through the process was that if you chose one of the options, and should that site or the first came to a dead end, if you like, you could pass the resolution today to have a backup plan. So you could have option 2 already up your sleeve to avoid reconsulting. It may help that process, and that came from. So if you chose an option and it came to a dead end for whatever reason, you have got a fallback option already resolved at this meeting. It would allow you to move on quickly to your second preferred option.
You'd need that by resolution though, would you?
Pass the resolution for that.
Yeah.
So the advice was that it may assist in avoiding a future delay. No certainty, but it may, if say you got to an annual plan phase and your first ranked option had fallen over for whatever reason, if you'd passed that resolution and identified it in the long-term plan, it might assist in not having to go through consultation on an annual plan. You could just shift the funding across, potentially.
Okay. John, sorry.
Comment I made this morning, Mr. King made the comment about the car parking. I've just looked what our option paper said, and it stated at least 80 car parks would be created on existing road berms to cover the number that would be lost. I've just received an email in from the General Manager, Bay of Plenty Briscoes, who's made the comments. We've just been made aware that the council is proposing to remove 54 space car park across the road from Briscoes, Taupo, and replace with a spread out of car parks across town. Not aware if we've been formally approached, but I would be very concerned if this did go ahead, as it would force more town centre workers to potentially park in the spaces outside the store and restrict councillor parking. Are you able to follow this up with council? Remembering that they are ratepayers.
Simple
And,
to do time limits. Time limits you do
Well,
there.
if you put time limits on, Mr. Chairman, the time limit of a worker doing a 4-hour shift, and he's got or he or she has a 60-minute car park, won't work.
Yeah,
They're
no,
all
no,
day
no,
parking there now.
They wouldn't be able to park outside Briscoes. The shoppers would.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you informed Briscoes and those others of that fact?
Well, yeah, yes, sadly. But anyway, I appreciate that, finding that information. Well, appreciate Mr. Briscoe.
Well, can you give
National
an,
thank Mr.
would
Briscoe.
you now, without it being in paper, suggest that those businesses that may or may not be affected by the increase in car parking along those berms have a time limit on their car parks?
No, so again, and it is detailed, Councillor, yes. So the berms are there to provide car parks. So whether or not, whatever you do in time, you'll be putting car parks there in time, because that's what they're there. That's what they're there for. Is their purpose. There's nothing legally stopping you, and it's in fact exactly why they are there. You then manage things and pressure points depending on what's happening at the time. So an example would be, we've now got several years ago I put time restrictions outside Carpet Court because they were having issues with people working in the CBD parking outside Carpet Court and leaving their car all day, and their customers couldn't find car parks. So we simply put time restrictions there. So you deal with things as the problems arise.
The point is that if we take 54 away and we're replacing it with 25, and you put 60 minutes outside, you're still going to disadvantage those workers that want to park all day in town.
This
I
is
don't
the
know-
document. This is the consultation document, open publicly, online and available.
Mm.
Everybody's had access to business owners, ratepayers, everyone.
Mm.
So you cannot individualise a business and pick them out as a special winner. You know, they've all had the opportunity. They've seen the car parks quite clearly in here. So, to my mind, that is consultation. Yeah, when we get into semantics of it and that sort of thing, of course we'll talk to them. Of course we'll, that's common sense, and we do. You know, Prince Motel's a classic example when we put the berms outside their thing, outside their motel. So that'll take place naturally, I would suggest. So, Councillor Harvey.
Just to reaffirm, I think if we did the building there and did, the museum, etc., I think we'd get more flack from the community for not being efficient with our services and everything else. I think there's a real danger of that. They'd think, well, they can't make up their minds, so we're going to do one of each. And from yesterday, from listening to several, particularly younger people, they really want it in that space. Yes, I understand, Barry, there's been various situations over the years, but it's still just a sector of the community that, for whatever reason, just can't get their heads around what we're trying to do. I would hope that, and we'd have to do some work on getting the sectors of the community who do want it to just be louder and more obvious, because once again, I think we have to be brave and do what we think is right. Two separate buildings would be totally inefficient.
Through the chair.
Okay, Councillor Williamson.
Absolutely, I support Councillor Truman's and Councillor Harvey's comments, not just about efficiencies. With the obviously we're all aware there's commentary around about, I defer to Councillor Hickling's wisdom and past experience with processes, and obviously, and notwithstanding the fact that it's been a hard story to sell over the past with the Civic Administration building on the domain, and a lot of it is various reasons. Obviously, it's parking or it's taking up green space, and it's just obviously there's even perception that we're going to be building on the north domain, which is wouldn't be happening even any of those options. And once again, historically, I mean, obviously, once I think comments been made, once a decision's made and everything's up and running, people either accept it or they indeed even enjoy it. I just repeat, going back and at my peril, make these these comments around about the Great Lakes Centre. Before that was built, there was a major uproar about it. And even prior to '88, there was the municipal administration was down on the domain for God knows how many decades. So, and even that was that's dangerous to try and use history as relevant today. I know there's been a changing sort of environment and changing demographic in town. So I agree with Councillor Harvey with the efficiencies. Going on domain, it's not a universal consultation. It's not a universal process. I'm not decrying it. I respect it, and it's part of legally, and it's also part of our rights to give people the expression to make a viewpoint. So I still support, notwithstanding there may be some. I take your worship's view about not being reluctant to go back to consult. We did that, I think, from memory, the process in a very much not a minor way, but a more of a with the Kinloch reserve, and we thought at the time that's probably not something that's probably advisable because for various reasons, for process reasons. But so I still maintain my stance on our discussion first thing this morning.
Right. Okay. Where we got to? Yeah, so I appreciate that. What I'm probably leaning back towards. Yeah. Do we need some more time on this, or I realise that we need to make a decision, but what I'm thinking again now, all the issues and that and the turning aside for 5 years, I'm a bit like Christina. Oh God, why can't we get on with it? So what about an appetite for a Great Lakes Centre museum combined upgrade, function centre, business centre down to Wharetaa. To Wharetaa, underground car parks, business, do the mahi down there as such, and have that, as Barry says, that cultural precinct down there still. The library, it's the eyesight, of course the bus centre over here too, that solves the bus thing. Definitely go underground parking, because you'll never do it later. And a combined museum, Great Lakes Centre, upgraded, beautiful, civic art, symphony orchestra playing. That's the actual cultural centre. That's what it's called, cultural precinct. And I think that would be a compromise all round. We can get on. What's that? Still be available down there. Still a possibility down there. Possibly, yeah. But it's the government will not fund an administration building to do the business. So you would keep it as the one cultural centre, with cultural activities, museums and all that sort of thing. So to see it in our lifetime, I think that's possibly where I'm sort of heading to. And I know it's changed from 2 hours ago. And hey, yeah, I'll leave it at that. But I'll just say that. What's that? You won't get funding down there if it's a combined administration. Yeah, they'll say, it happened to Potiki. Shane Jones told me directly, he said they tried to hoodwink me. They said they were doing this cultural thing and all that, and they were taking officers in there. He said, so we pulled out. So, no, but they were combining their council functions, which makes sense. Yeah, I understand that, in their cultural building. But they weren't sort of quite clear about it. Anyway, Councillor Stewart.
Would we not still get IL4 funding for our council building because it's going to be that earthquake standard? So we would still get that as if it into Whaitoa Street.
True. Yeah, definitely for the bunker part or the.
And that being located next to the police station was something that was important to me. Is if that's one of our main functions, is to be able to do that emergency management function right next to the police station. Makes sense.
Can you retrofit Great Lakes Centre IL4 or? Yeah, wouldn't think so. So, have I got any supporters on that little scenario?
I think one of the fishhooks that you might run into with this is a combined Great Lakes Centre museum is not what you consulted on, was it?
Well,
is it significant again? Sorry to be a pain.
Yeah.
What you did consult on quite clearly was a museum somewhere in the domain, and we were quite specific on those words that it was somewhere in the domain. So putting it with the Great Lakes Centre is somewhere in the domain. So I think that's fine.
I think that'll have public appeal. I would suggest Barry.
Well, I've always supported.
Okay,
I've always supported that concept, Your Worship. So it sits comfortably with me.
Well, I've always argued 2 years ago more about a museum versus the cab, and I went for the museum arts that needed something doing to it. And if we look at the submission made yesterday, I think the request was, if I could read it out, along the lines of wanting, they wanted assistance for someone to look at what they can do with the existing museum rather than a new build. And if we look at the documentation here, the number of submitters against don't build new, and that was the issue, was 474 versus 100 against and 125 for. I think we're getting awfully tangled up whether it's a building or a museum or an art centre or what.
Through Your Worship, I think to add some context there, I think correct me if I'm wrong, the consultation process was not to build a museum now. It didn't say whether it was to build on the site or build new or whatever. You just got it.
So actually, that Lorraine Charmundi Smith from the Art Society, she's a very good submission. Their building is knackered as such. So there's another combination you could put in with the Great Lakes in the museum. So that would make sense. Back to Barry's cultural.
It'd all have to be inclusive of those arty type people. For a museum and
you're one of them.
Okay, that could be.
Just
when I retire, I could.
One more thing.
Yes.
Once again, if we're doing one thing there and something over there,
two things.
Yep. And communities like Turangi say, they're getting two things. It makes sense to put them all together, and it's logical. Whereas, okay, we're going to have a building, and they're going to do the arts centre. What are we going to get?
Just through the chair, just to clarify, from a practical perspective, we couldn't hope to build both at the same time. So logically, you would do one, and from my suggestion would be the cab, and then flow on to that set.
And just hopefully by then, Turingi's aspirations will be in the long term or whatever they want. Mangkino aspirations will be in there. So we do the administration building now and then have those signalled to the future that will be a process that we'll undertake at that time, the museum come Great Lakes Centre come.
So just to clarify, we're committing to $23 million, or what are we committing to? A feasibility study? What are we committing to?
I'm suggesting back to Whaitoa, whatever the scenario is there, but with a verbal sort of or formal commitment as such to get to.
So, Mr. Chairman, just to
Yeah.
help out a little bit, we've got,
Yeah.
as we said before, we've got a long-term plan coming up in 2 years' time. I'm wondering whether or not, given that the Friends' request was for some professional help, maybe the answer on this is that you signal your desire to build a museum, but that you put in, the money that you put in now is that design money to be able to work through what that is, with a view of putting the dollar spend, whatever that happens to be, through that next long-term plan. It means that then you're making the big funding decision in 2 years' time, applying for in 2 years' time.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way forward. It's what the Friends asked for, and it gives you an opportunity to explore what those options are, acknowledging that the community wants something done to put some soul and look
and
after a
the
jewel in the
arts.
crown. Yeah,
The arts community
arts
too.
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and community groups, meeting rooms.
Sorry, Dave. Just on that very quickly,
Yeah.
I believe that they asked for funding as part of this amendment to the long-term plan. Now, Mr. Green mentioned yesterday, I think it was about the $1 million. I can only find 10. The consultation document says 57. Where does it actually state that million? Is that in renewals or where?
So I can give you the spreadsheet, Councillor. It's a combination of renewals and capital items. So that's over the 10-year period is just over $1 million. It was 135,000 last year alone.
But under Campex, sorry Barry, under Campex I can only find that 10.
So it's again a mix of capital and renewals.
So 10,000 from capital and the others from...
I can't give you the exact, I've got the spreadsheet here, I can share it with you.
Yeah, I'm just going on the long-term plan.
I can share it with you, we've got the, I've got the
so
details
my next
here.
question is, Mr. Green, can that come out as part of this amendment to this amendment to the long-term plan, which is what it as an amendment to Council's draft-only LTP amendment? So effectively, they're saying, can it be into next year's monies as of the 1st of July as part of doing the change now? If
So
I
you need to know what you're doing. Those monies are things like, I'm just, haven't got the spreadsheet in front of me, but when a seat needs replacing, it gets replaced. When a CCTV camera needs replacing, it gets replaced. When a roof needs replacing, it gets replaced. So what we would do is much like something new or change on that existing building.
So would we need to set aside some funding to ensure that happens?
If you wanted to do the design, absolutely. We don't have a project or funding for that at the current time.
Yes,
You just
Barry?
mentioned the cost of Te Whare. There is an estimated cost of all the options. Whichever decision we make today or in the future, whichever option we take, I think we seriously need to go back and revisit some of those. Through the submissions, we got criticised for the estimated cost of some of this build, and I honestly think that we need to probably revisit that and see if there is dare I say it, a cheaper option of build, purely because I think some of the perhaps some of the costings are a bit skewed. We need to be mindful of the rates and the intake, but we also want to be able to have a fit for purpose building. But whilst those figures are guidelines, I don't think they're certainly not set in concrete or anything like that. There's a lot of processes we've got to go through before we get to a finite estimate or cost.
So any potential resolution where cost to be determined. Yeah. Cheaper. Yeah. Yeah.
We don't need a palatial building. We need it that looks good and is functional.
Sorry, Councillor Harvey and then Councillor Truman.
Just the other thing to bear in mind, if we keep everything in one building, we've got efficiency. We're not doing 2 lots of toilets and 2 lots of everything if you've got to have 2 buildings. And the other thing to bear in mind, which has already been mentioned, is that whole idea of millennials and this whole changing environment that we're going to have, are we going to be in the future left with a building that's massive that actually we're going to have to try and lease out or sell or what? Whereas if it's all at the domain, or if it's all there and it's an extension, then we can just redesign that as community space and it's functional for the community. Whereas now we've got a building here and a building there.
200 and what we need? 250 square metres. 2,500 square metres. Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion?
Square foot. Yeah. Square metres. Yeah. Sorry. Yes.
So if we decide to go for it, if there's enough support and we go for it there, but we have Tūwharetoa as the backup, so that if we hit too many hurdles in 6 months' time or we've reconsulted or whatever, we can fall back on that. Surely we've still got to be aspirational. We've still got to try and make it work, not just give up because we think it might be too hard.
Your worship?
Yeah.
Your wish?
Yes. Councillor Williamson.
Absolutely. I mean, just support Deputy Mayor Harvey, sorry, not Councillor. Totally. And I mean, just in the context of Tūwharetoa, I don't see them as a backup. I see them as a complete a partner right from the very start. I just find it sort of unbelievable that you get to a sector of the community, not for I keep repeating, for various reasons, and I totally respect Councillor Hickling's view because he's been through the process 3 times. There's always different reasons. Whether it's like going around the circles here, parking or going on the green spaces, and it's trying to get out there and communicate to the communities the benefits of it. It's a civic heart, not just a council. And I do not also get the prescription around about an attitude towards council staff is almost they should be either out of town or they're an integral part of our community like any other professional, and they should be respected. And they bring people into town, not just to service all make everything happen through our CEO, all their levels of service. So it's bigger than that. And then not to mention, and I take Christine comments for the value about not being palatial, but has to look smart. I mean, it's not about egos and empire building. It's just ridiculous. You're always going to get that as a council or an administration body of any organisation. So I still support the integrated model we looked at through the original consultation, and whatever it takes. I know, so I'm not going to move from that.
Okay, Councillor Rankin.
I don't want to give in on the domain, but I think I have to be practical because I do not want these people out of a building for years and years. I don't think the cost is worth it in terms of that. Yeah, I just don't think people understand what they're asking the chief executive and the staff to do for a prolonged period of time. And if you think it's working at the moment, it's not. There might be one staff member every now and again who say it's fine. Most of them tell you every time you get an opportunity to talk to them, they hate it and it doesn't work for them. And look, I know it doesn't from a lot of other organisations. I think we are, I want to compromise. I want to do what we want to do now. And I'm disappointed about that because the ultimate thing is to develop that domain. I absolutely agree with that, but I just don't think I can take that risk.
Councillor Stewart.
I don't see that doing the two as a compromise because what you can create on the domain is still a heart. You don't need a council building in there to make it the heart that they were asking for. It's going to, you can be really out there in what you think about what you can do in there to make it the heart that they're asking for, because they're asking you for like 20, 30, 40 years out. So you've really got to stretch your imagination further than an administration building to make it happen. A heart isn't going to come because of an administration building. It's going to come because of the things you put round it in there. So you can take that out and still put the things around there to make it work.
Yep.
Can I ask, if Tūwharetoa Street, if that was agreed, is there any impediments? Like, could various businesses do something to try and stop that, who've obviously vehemently opposed it. What is the risk there? Because I think that would probably happen.
Legal risk is about process.
Yeah, Councillor, we covered this off this morning. It was about, judicial review is about focuses on the process, not the merits. So despite there being some opposition to the merits of 2 Wharetoa Street as a proposal, any challenge would need to focus on a process failing on the part of the council through a judicial review. And as was discussed this morning, and as Philip referred to, we've had audit over our process twice now, so we're confident that we've got the process right. Where exactly that challenge would come from, or what particular part of either part of the process or what aspect it would focus on, I'm unclear at this stage.
Councillor Park.
I was really excited yesterday when I sort of had a light bulb moment about the sort of more around option D, and I'm actually annoyed with myself that I didn't think a bit bigger about what that collaboration would have been, and that it should have been D instead of B in the first place.
You did ask for D.
But I really admire the aspirations of our Deputy Mayor, Councillor Williamson and Councillor Truman, but I don't have the same appetite for risk, unfortunately. So I think I'd like to follow the Mayor in that we do 2 Wharetoa Street, smart, full aisle 4, bus station. I'm not really interested in retail, but it definitely needs to be a cafe in there. And that the direction be set for the next council to be bold and brave and do something wonderful with a cultural heart.
Yep.
Oh, we will. We can find that
Okay,
one.
so that's
Yeah.
Hannah, Barry, same. Tong? We sort of know your views.
Yes,
and
still with the lease option. And it might, that option still might be a good option, because, what I'm hearing is a lot of confusion about, well, not confusion, but with this uncertainty. And by just stopping and pausing for a moment and reflecting on where you're at isn't a bad thing, just throwing it to the wind.
I think we're quite clear as what we want in the perfect world, but Councillor Truman? Still in the domain. Elise? Roseanne?
Look, I'm fully supportive of exploring what we can do with the domain in the future, but by doing it this way, you're not signalling any investment at this stage. It's just an intention. But I'm still going back to my original, which was lease.
Yep. John?
Lease to buy.
Oh, you wish? You wish? Well, obviously still the domain, but not that notwithstanding fact, a change of the actual options.
Okay. So you're still the domain, but you could go to Wharetoa, is it? So? Yeah. Okay. Yep. Cool. So I'll just draw a fence. No, domain. no, domain. But domain, but you, whatever decision that's made, you'll run it. Yeah. Councillor Body?
It certainly is a lease, and I'm a little bit like Councillor Tonganui about, Kingy, about the confusion in this room. We're looking at about 6 different things all at once, and I believe we need to take a deep breath, maybe come back with some fresh ideas, but I'm certainly... There may well be fresh ideas. I've got my right to say what I think without shaking heads, but I'm sticking with the lease at the moment. Thanks, Your Worship.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, John. Rosie?
So just back to my original question, can we not have that option and explore it, and if it comes up against too many roadblocks within a few months' time, then we revert to the other one? Why can't that be happening?
It's time.
Yeah, I know
timing.
that.
We would have
I
to
know that.
defer everything too, because it goes into, we cannot make
But why can't we
decisions.
just get on with it?
Well, that's what we're trying to, yeah.
No, if that's what we choose, then we go back out for consultation about the different option, and yes, we won't know any of these things really until after the election anyway, and that doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, well, we can actually make the decision today. Yeah. So what Mr. McCaddy had mentioned to earlier is the legal ramifications of a different option being put out there and the timeline to that. And the CEO is advised that it goes into the election cycle process, which you'll have to shut down for 3 months, is it correct? July through, so you're basically next year before. And it's an incoming, probably different group of people would be making the decision. So, but your domain still? Yeah.
So does this, is this out of confidentiality once we do this?
It's not in.
Okay, sorry. It's just so it's all out there.
Yep. It's on. You're live on broadcast. I've just said someone emailed me. Yep.
Yeah, I want my what I've said to be.
Still the domain?
Yep, but I
Yep.
want it to be recorded.
Yep. Cool. Okay, Maggie. Okay. All right. So yep. Two photo, as I said before, Christine Nana is 533. So. Yep.
Even if you make a decision, you actually need 6.
Right.
That's right. So you actually haven't made a decision.
Yeah.
Because the chairman casting vote is always status quo. Is that right, Mr. Jakes? Mr. Jakes? Yes, casting vote is status quo. Or just
No.
it's just
Yeah. So I get one vote and then a casting vote.
5 and unders.
So I get 2 votes. Ah. Where's the cat?
It used to be status quo,
Yeah, I'm not sort of comfortable moving it forward now. Yeah, perhaps we should have a break. Well, no, I don't think it's going to achieve anything either. So, I can.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Well, we won't have a problem with two Frota by the sound. It's straight. What's that?
But it would take months.
We
to
do.
know that.
The only one is you're going to get a competing landowner that could apply to have some appeal, judicial review. Nigel's quite clearly said it's around process. It's not about car parking or anything like that. Yeah, it's about process. So that's not going. Well, it could. Cleanest of all the sites. Yeah. The visionary part can come.
The visionary part is the.
Yeah. The arts.
Well, it will.
Yeah. And yeah. And you will get government funding if it sticks strictly to a cultural precinct.
Absolutely.
You won't. You
It's not an
possibly.
old building.
It's not a guarantee if you put some officers in there.
No.
So, yeah, it is a guarantee to make your museum work, because once people have been to a museum, they're not likely to go back for 5 years. But
Across the floor?
eh?
John
But-
Williamson, are you going to cross the floor?
Come on, Johnny. I'm just putting it out there. It's clean and tidy if it's completely cultural.
Yeah.
It's clean
Yeah.
and tidy. There's
They
no
will fund
civic
a lot of it.
administration. But you're right. There'll be a clever way of possibly doing it, but nothing's guaranteed, of course.
But answer your question, John, there's offices in the museum right now, and there's offices in the Great Lakes Centre right now. Between those two sites, in the museum and the library, we probably have about 30 staff sitting on the domain today. But it's a difference between that and 180 staff of the general administration.
Okay, so that would, in the event of going for option D, the potential funding from whatever source could be compromised by the integration of that.
Could be.
So what Sorry. What has always been clear is that central government money won't be available for the office outside of anything we can get for the IL4, which isn't certain, but will be for the museum. If it's one building, then you proportion that off and you run an argument that the museum part is 50% of the overall cost or whatever it happens to be from a square meterage cost perspective. So you'd apportion it out so that the office building isn't part of the application that you make.
What are you looking at me for? Notwithstanding my comments, and I still believe that we're a visionary council, and bold and brave is sit there and it's easy to say that quick enough. But I also do understand, also appreciate the commentaries made around about the timing of it, and it's unknown. And with council, it's untenable the situation. The staff the way they are spread around the district, around the town. I believe that's tenable. So don't like the word compromise, but I think in terms of expediting a process and getting council staff back into one building on 2 Wharetāua Street, and I appreciate the commentary around about going forward with developing the museum around and also upgrading the museum with the Great Lakes Centre with an atrium. That certainly needs to go into I would suggest the next long-term plan. So on that basis, I will go with the majority and with the status 2 Wharetāua Street.
Okay.
So what's that
All right.
vote the vote in
6.
2, 3.
Yeah. Okay, so 2 Wharetāua is the clear option there. Car parking, underground parking.
No.
2 floors.
You've got to retrofit. If you're going to do it properly.
Yeah.
Do it right, do it properly. You can't retrofit that stuff.
2 floors, Christine?
Yes.
Barry? 1 floor.
You
Tom?
had, you had 66 submissions. Say underground. Jeez.
Including farmers.
Kirsty? 2, yeah. Roseanne?
I think doing 2 Wharetāua is going for
2 floors? Yeah. 2. Okay, so John? Sorry.
Yes, we're not doing 2 Wharetāua. I've got no underfloors.
Yeah.
Oh,
where can you?
no.
Where else can you protect
No.
that Toyota Corona 1984?
1994.
Bloody mint condition too.
Bloody oath.
Yeah. You and Peter Bradnock are the only people in town with the
Saying
same.
once you can afford it.
Yeah. Right, Councillor Stewart. Sorry.
That's right.
2.
Yeah, I think 2, but I also, one of the submitters was saying that with the building material they use, that you didn't have to have as much steel and stuff or something because of the weight of it. So I think there's some options that you could explore for
Yeah,
a
I'm sure-
better option for
I'm sure that'll
2-story.
happen. I think the price has been, and IL4, I don't know what the difference is between that, yeah. Okay, Philip, have you got a resolution there, please? 2 levels, thanks, yeah.
So I think, Your Worship,
And the in-berm parking too.
Yes, the
Yeah, yeah.
Berm's going to be
Yeah.
immediately.
That needs to be done prior to construction starting.
What are we going to tag anything to do with the bus station, or is that a
Yes.
later decision?
Yeah. So I think we have a 5-minute break and someone can work up the,
So we
potential
will. We
resolution.
can certainly do that, and we'll work up a resolution. I'm assuming the bus stop you do want included in
Yes.
this? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I
Yes.
believe
Yes.
that is
So-
in my opinion.
So we can work up the resolution for 2 Wharetāua Street. The other one is the museum. What you went out to consult, option 2 on there did provide money for the capital build for the museum, and there's actually, we're just looking at the little graphs, there's some money in there for next year as well, which we're assuming was design money. Finding out. So when we come back, we'll do that, but that would be you saying 2 Wharetāua, so it's actually quite a clean decision. 2 Wharetāua Street is the office, and as what you went out for consultation, your preferred option. And yes, we will do the museum as what you went out as option 2, which has got funding in those following years as modelled in the long-term plan amendment.
Perfect.
So you are providing funding for the museum,
Good.
but not next year. That's
No,
out.
of course. No, you've got to do one after another.
And that was how that ended up in the first place. When you chose to include it as an option, that funding did get, even though it wasn't the preferred option, that funding was put in further out.
So we're going to have a few minutes to craft those resolutions.
John?
Could I just raise the question, okay, you're probably going to go for too far underground. Now, the other option was in Boom. How do you... No, I appreciate that, but I'm just wondering whether, to make it clear, you got too far underground, and the in-burn are going to take place anyway. We don't have to consult on that. That's going to take place anyway. So I like it worded that way. So, and then you're going to get your 60 metres and your 60
So just so we can get it clear in our head, so we're talking 242 Street, we're talking IL4,
Yes.
we're talking 2 stories of underground car parking, and we're talking about the Boom car parking as proposed. And we're talking about buses, and we're talking about museum as per that option too.
Yes, Councillor Williamson.
With the, with developing there, just on the potential bus hub, that's obviously some work being done with the transport strategy at the moment, so that...
So we've got, and you've got in your diligent, the Abley report, which talks about the fact that the buses can go there. So this would basically feed into that piece of work, but it's a decision you can make.
What? Sorry, just to... Oh.
Sorry, I was just a bit anecdotal. My friend lives in Nelson. There's a bus station there that, obviously the bus stations sometimes notoriously get graffiti and things, so I'm not suggesting it'll be here, but what they do in Nelson, they play classical music at night. I think keeps people away.
Serving.
It's what Mr. Brake did at Paituki by putting the music under the verandas. He reduced his graffiti and damage up there.
Yeah. Adley?
Sorry, I was just going to say on the buses, in the consultation document, it states that there was an additional 300 square metres of ground floor space for alternative uses such as a cafe or bus facilities, which was the wording that you wanted us to put in there when we crafted that.
Yeah.
We could include that in the resolution, so it does still just keep that open.
If you put that in, I will vote against it.
Yeah, bus.
No, it says for alternative uses such as a cafe or bus facilities.
Yeah.
Yeah, not retail. No.
Excellent. Yeah. Now, museum thing. Have we got that clear with the resolution? What are you saying there, Gareth?
So we're saying that
so
it's
this is number 2 in the
it's
resolution.
as per option 2 in your resolution, but in your consultation document. But maybe if we just give us a few minutes now, we'll come back with some resolutions.
Yeah.
Because you are talking about $22 million you're going to commit over the next... That's what we're committing to, isn't it?
Well, it all depends what the price is. Yeah.
So I think both of these, both the office and the museum, it really comes down to the value engineering of what you do and the detailed design and scoping. So I know with the office, we've allowed that to say it's got all the contingencies and whatnot based in there. It won't be that, but I think through good conscience, you probably want to allow that. It's not a target for us to build to. It's the maximum of what our QS has said will be there. There's a whole lot of decision making that you'll make through the process, which hopefully will reduce it. But let's face it, some of it might increase it. And you talk about buses, that hasn't been factored in. That will increase the cost. So between those, the unders and overs, we'll get to whatever it is that it is.
Yeah. Councillor Harvey. Councillor Park.
Oh, that
Kirk. Park. Sorry. Park.
Whatever. We'll also have be able to apply for funding to central government in regards to the IL4 bill.
We'll get that in there.
And what was the other point I was going to make? I forgot.
I just thought of something then.
Oh yes, that's...
Yeah.
Can we just talk about that and we'll come back?
Meeting.
Yep.
Something else to talk about. I had something else to think. Something else.
Mr. Chairman, in regards of what you may or may not, decision you may or may not make, the one buy to lease or lease to buy or the lease option, are we just wiping them now? We're not further investigating them?
Correct. Maggie?
Yeah, just with the museum, I think that with what the submitters have asked for, with the heart and everything that's going to happen, just by saying we're going to look at the museum, can we add something in there to make it a heart, please?
Exactly.
Because
Museum and
otherwise,
arts.
if we look at just a museum, then we're cutting out, fixing up the Great Lakes Centre and things like that. I think it all needs to be looked in together, but the museum, a new museum, yes, but also what we want to do with that space, just because we're not going to do it now. But if we don't put something in there, it might get lost, and I don't want it to get
And
lost.
something around that, obviously we haven't consulted on the Great Lakes Centre, so we just need to take advice from these guys what to put in the resolution regarding that, so we don't compromise our consultation. So yeah, it could be cultural centre, museum / arts centre / something else. Yeah. Okay. So we will adjourn the meeting for quarter of an hour. Yep. Yes. After that. Yeah.